Hello, Darren here. I don't know if this is a special episode of We Are the News or changing my algorithm, or maybe I should just call it changing my mind because the last time I recorded a conversation, I had gone full on down the route of I do not consent, and then in the last week, and to some damage to my own personal reputation, I've decided, as it stands right at this very moment in time, to vote for reform because after spending a month walking the south of the country, breaking my back in doing so, trying to raise money for the vaccine injured, I discovered that there isn't the numbers for the I do not consent. There isn't the numbers for non-voters. Everybody is voting. And if you've been paying attention to social media, you see that there is a very, very strong push and a lot of chatter and a lot of noise for reform. Now, I have spoken with the man standing in front of me a couple of times. We had a nice long 40-minute conversation about a week and a half ago. That did convince me that maybe reform have the numbers to make a difference, to harm the existing political system, and just maybe a Brexit 2.0 in which we actually get a massive change in the governance of our country. So, Peter, thanks for joining me. You're a fellow wild camper, so that already ticks a few boxes as far as I'm concerned. You are standing in the Sutton and Devonport constituency. You're standing against a much disliked person in Plymouth, Luke Pollard. I might bring a picture of him up in a minute. And you're standing for reform. Peter, could you introduce yourself? Thanks for coming on and just tell us what you're about, why you are standing, and what you hope to achieve in this election.
Yep. Thanks, Darren, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I mean, this is such an important time for all of us. But if I kind of take a step back and say, why am I standing? I got involved in kind of homelessness way back when in 1994, when I was traveling around South America. And I fed a young boy who was on the streets, and I was told, please don't give him money. He'll be robbed and beaten for his money. And please stay with him while he eats, because if you walk away, even the food will be stolen from him. And I've always kind of regretted I couldn't do more. And so as I've kind of traveled around the world working, I've always stopped and talked to homeless people because, it's too easy just to chuck in some cash or people cross the road. So I've always given them some time, right? Sat and talked to them. And so when I moved down to Plymouth from Tavistock, I had a bit more time on my hands, kind of semi-retired. I joined the Plymouth Street Run, and I thought I was going to change the world. I thought, I'll go in with my business knowledge and, we'll make it better for everybody. And I quickly realized it's very transactional, that level. The people on the streets, if you say to them, hey, we've got a great plan to change everything, they're like, what's the vegetarian meal tonight, mate? Or what's the meat meal? It's very transactional. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to change the world, not literally, but make life better for these people in Plymouth, I need to get more involved in local council stuff because the council earns money. I thought, I know what, I'll join Labour, the party for the people. Anyway, yeah. And I'm not I'm not a political person particularly. I'm kind of a bit anti-establishment. I'm a bit of a rebel. I've always been in trouble with teachers. From the day I was born, I was arguing with my parent before I could probably even speak. And so it was difficult for me to join Labour because wasn't really where I would have thought I fitted. But I did it for for genuinely the right reasons. People can say, he's talking a lot of shit here. He's just on a podcast making stuff up. But judge me how you want. But that was the reason. And so I joined Labour, and it was challenging, let's say. But I did it for the right reasons, but I quickly realized that I didn't fit the mold. I didn't tick the boxes. I'm a white, oldish, straight man. Okay. And I was blocked at every opportunity. I was told this is an all women shortlist. It's not about the person. It's about the gender balance. And I was then told I didn't get selected to run in one position because I didn't show my love for the party. They asked me the question, how will you do this job? I told them how I would fix things in Devon and Cornwall, and they rejected me for the position. And when I asked for feedback, which I had to fight for, I had to really fight for feedback, and I had to kind of threaten a kind of legal action and all that kind of stuff because they wouldn't give me any feedback. I got unofficial feedback from somebody I trusted and knew who was on the panel, and she said, Well, it's because you didn't show your love for the party. You didn't talk about the party. So that was the final straw for me. And I took a step back and I went, that's it. I've had enough of politics. I was still working with the suit run all the time. Took a step back, but the numbers on the suit run just keep going up and up and up. When I started almost 3 years ago, we'd be doing about 70 meals on a night. We've been up to 140 meals.
Is that every
140? Night? It's ridiculous. So I thought, I can't not do anything. Right? I'd taken a step back, but it just was like a smack in the face that I'm not going to be able to change anything. These people, and a lot of these people, Darren, they've grown up on the streets of Plymouth. They were born and bred Plymouth people. They're good people, but people don't know their story. And so I thought, okay, I need to do something. And I looked at the reform contract. I wasn't expecting a general election. I thought, well, this gives me a platform. This gives me a platform to get people to understand why homelessness, why rough sleeping is such an important issue and why we need to deal with it. So that's why I joined Reform. And it is genuinely to give me a platform to try and fix things in Plymouth, because you can't do it as an independent candidate. As much as I'd like to go be independent, there's no platform. The system is completely against independent people. The system's against Reform, you know. Yeah. So anyway, that's a long answer to a short question. Sorry.
So why? And I've stood as an independent candidate twice in local elections.
Yeah.
I joke that they call me 5% Darren because that's the maximum amount of votes that I could achieve, and that's with quite a large Twitter platform. And I had a large Twitter platform back in 2021. I make a lot of shockwaves and a lot of noise, and I really upset Labour. I got Labour to focus all of their money on the Peveril ward on the basis of my Twitter account. Why have independents got no opportunity or no chance to win in particularly general elections, but also at a local level?
Because the system's not in the independents' favour. I mean, for example, hustings, they don't invite all the parties. I've not been invited to all the hustings. It's just the system is not right, and it is skewed totally towards a big party. I mean, you look at the armies of Labour people just in Sutton and Devonport and in Moorview. You know, technically, we have zero chance of beating them, and this is why we have to kind of do something. And that's why, for me, Reform gives me a platform better than being independent. Reform, so far, don't expect you to necessarily follow the party line. With Labour, if you didn't follow the party line, mate, you're out. Yep. Simple as that. And I didn't follow the party line. So we need to change the system. We absolutely need to change the system. And from my point of view, there should be a standard system across the board, a set of hustings for every city. Stop all this knocking on doors and leafleting stuff. By all means, have 3 standard leaflets delivered for every party, free of charge. Make it equal. But it is not set up for the independents, not yet. But that's got to change in time. It has to change.
Mm-hmm. And what have Labour, who are currently the incumbent, Luke Pollard, what have they done so wrong in the city, in your opinion? And how do you think, if Reform get in, that can be turned around?
I think it's what have they even done for the city, Darren? If you look at, I'm not being funny or anything, you look through Luke Pollard's website and you actually look for stuff. And the question I would ask him, and anybody can ask me as well, what is your legacy? What are you going to leave behind? When people look back and say, you stood for this city for 5 years, what did you achieve? And I want to have very specific things. I want to get it to a point, as I said before, where rough sleeping is eradicated, okay? And I don't mean just put everybody into Salvation Army or the George. Find solutions that the rough sleepers come up with. Work with the rough sleepers, because I work with these people, okay? I know that sticking them in the Salvation Army is not the answer. Yep. So we need to say, what is, just so, for example, what is Luke's legacy? He hasn't done anything, mate. Child poverty in Plymouth is appalling, okay? And these children that grow up in poverty, they end up on the streets. That's where they end up. They don't end up better off. A lot of them end up in the streets. We have families, we have brothers and sisters coming down to the suit run. It's just wrong. And the thing is, right, a lot of people go, well, they're rough sleepers, they're on drugs, and they'll judge them, okay? What we've got to remember is that just simple stuff, you can be selfish and you can say, okay, I just want safer streets, right? I want my kids to be able to walk down that street and there's a nasty man down there, rough sleeper. The problem is people sleeping on the streets are scared. Right? They are in fear On a Saturday, they hate Saturday night because that's the night they get kicked and spat at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if we can get, let's say, the rough sleeper off the street, like that's good for them. But also then the family that got young kids that want to just walk down one of the streets of the city centre, they're not scared themselves because the kids don't see a scary rough sleeper who's actually scared themselves. So it's real basic stuff down. It's not been dealt with, right? Labour haven't dealt with this. They're spending £37 million on a vanity project called the Armada Way, now up to 54 million.
Yeah.
They've got £570 million worth of long-term debt. What's the interest payments on that? Mm-hmm. That interest payment alone could be done something around child poverty. But we need to talk to the people that are affected. We need to do what I call micro projects. So we might work with a school, okay, a local school. We say, what could we do for the children? Now, it might be, and this is just me having a few conversations. One idea was, imagine first day back at school, the kids have a new pair of shoes. They choose a pair of trainers, right? That the impact on that young child's mental health in having a new pair of shoes rather than an old pair of shoes, that could be massive. And it's tiny, right? It's tiny, it's achievable. It's things like that are done by working at local micro levels. None of that's happening, Darren. I've spoken to Luke Pollard. He laughs in my face when I ask him to do a husting to talk about these things. So in answer to your question, nothing. They've done nothing but vanity projects. And it really gets, well, I'm not going to swear, probably not allowed to, but it does. It really,
That's right. It really, really pisses me off, and I'm allowed to swear. I've got no one watching me from upon high. And you're right, the constant revolution of conservative Labour, local councils, and national governments have done nothing but drive this country into the ground. And I said at the beginning of this little segment, I changed my mind from I do not consent and not voting to I'm going to vote for reform. Because if I don't vote for reform, or a third party, one of those two legacy parties are going to get into power. And Plymouth, we're going to talk about some of the other issues that affect Plymouth, has gone downhill rapidly in the last 10, 20 years. It's really, really noticeable to see. And the whole, whether it's the economics, the general environment, the demographic of the people that are living here, and there can only be one finger of blame, and that's the existing parties. We're going to come to the end of this segment now. Is there anything else that you'd like to add with regards to why you are standing?
Yeah, my focus is all about think local, act local. The big parties will have their big grand ambitions. And if you look at, the 6,500 teachers that Labour are talking about recruiting, there's over 100 state schools in Sutton and Devonport. If you break it down, we get about 20 heads. So we can't, my key point is we can't rely on Westminster to fix our problems. We have to come together as a community. Yeah. We have to hold the council to account and say, where is all this money going? Yeah. 400 odd million pounds goes to the police, 167 million pounds of that is an extra precept. 220 million pounds is what Plymouth City Council have every year of our money. We deserve to know what that money is being spent on. We deserve to be consulted, and they need to be held to account. And that is my number one priority, Dan. Hold them to account and say, what, you've got our money. We will tell you what's a priority, not you tell us what's a priority. And this is why we can win this with the non-voters. The non-voters can stand up now and say, you know what? I'm not having this anymore. We are going to hold them to account, and we are going to make this city what it should be.
And quickly then, so two things that have just come out, my mind thinking out is how much do you think, and you don't have to put a value on it. Mm-hmm. You said there's 70 people turning up every night or once a week at the soup kitchen. How much money does it really cost to get those 70 people not to need a soup kitchen, to get the 30 permanent sleepers, street walkers, whatever you want to call them, to get them off the street? How much money does that actually cost when you think that the Labour Council can spend, I don't know, £2 million, I think in the end it costs, to put a statue up on the Hoe that nobody wanted, or to cut all the trees down in Armada Way, the Plymouth Tree Massacre, which also, became an international story. That's cost tens and tens of millions. A fraction of that could have just been put away and will solve our homeless problem. It doesn't cost much money.
Well, the thing is, and it's not about having permanent residencies for the homeless people. It might just be some low-cost shelters that allows them to be transient, because they don't always want to be in a big place. So it's thousands, not hundreds of thousands. For example, we could build low-cost, let's say, temporary accommodation. Let's call them sheds, okay? And let's say somebody says, oh, they'll only last about 5 years. So what? So what? That person might not even live 5 years, sad to say. So let's at least give them some flexibility, but have these pods, let's say, in different parts of the city that are secure and discreet, because putting lots of people together in one place, that's scary for them as well. So we have to understand their mental health issues, and having solitude is actually sometimes more important. So thousands of pounds, Darren, not hundreds of thousands of pounds. It just really annoys me that this is not being looked at, and everybody wants to boil the ocean. This is fixable, right? This is fixable for not a lot of money. Let's work with local businesses. Let's get some money from them if the council's got no damn money. Sorry, I got it. Just
Yeah. I mean, Britain, or the UK, United Kingdom, is supposed to be a first world country, and I always remember seeing, and we'll end it right here, but I always remember seeing a documentary, and there was some Indians from Papua New Guinea, and they'd been brought over to. And I always remember it because I'm a darts player, and one of these Indians picked up a dart. And he went boom, and he hit the bullseye, boom, straight in, and that's what he was aiming for. But they commented, they said, "Why are there people sleeping on the streets? Where we come from, the jungles, there are no homeless people." And I always stuck in my head, first world country, and yet they've got these backward Indians, headhunters from Papua New Guinea, and they're laughing and mocking the United Kingdom for that. And there seems to be no intention from the establishment at local or national level to solve this problem. Okay, I'm just going to stop recording. Okay, Peter, Reform UK candidate for Sutton and Devonport here in Plymouth, standing against the dreadful Luke Pollard of Labour. What other local issues, we've discussed homelessness and child poverty, what other local issues do you think are pertinent to the people of Plymouth, and that you're standing on and hope to resolve in the future if you're successful in your election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our young people, okay, they are reliant on service economy jobs. The country is a service economy. We've outsourced so much of our manufacturing. So there are so few apprenticeships for young people. We've got a disconnect between, the college and business and actually what young people want. And for me, if you take Derriford as an example, okay, Derriford is a 10,000 employee business. I come from a recruitment industry background. I've been working in recruitment for over 35 years. So I would typically expect an organization with 10,000 employees to have about 1,000 vacancies at any one time. Okay. So I thought maybe Derriford will have about 500. We keep hearing how they're desperate for nurses, etc., etc. My daughter trained as a nurse for a year. But then she didn't follow the process, got kicked out after a year because she handed one paper in late and didn't realise she had to resubmit it because it was marked anyway. So she went to work at Derriford after being kicked out of the university and was told she couldn't apply for any more healthcare university courses for 5 years for being such a bad person, handing a piece of paper in late. So she went back. She went to Derriford, worked there as a theatre assistant. My other daughter's a medical assistant from the Navy. And my wife's been a community physio for years. So we know the NHS pretty well. So I looked at the career site, and so Christy was trying to get a job there. She got a job there. They said, "Oh, you need to join an apprenticeship scheme." She said, "Yeah, brilliant. Okay, do that," rather than have another 2 or 3 years of £10,000 a year debt. They said, "Oh, yeah, there might be one next year." So you look on the career site now for Derriford, and they have one apprenticeship on their website. They have 10 other jobs on their website. So hang on, how are they filling all the vacancies? Well, I know for a fact that in the allied healthcare profession, so that's physios, OTs, etc., they have 800 skilled workers from overseas. Now, I don't know how many nurses they've got, because I know they've got nurses from overseas. So Derriford are stealing skills from overseas to fill the skills gap, whilst not having any apprenticeships for our young people. So guess what? Next year, when those people may have run out of visa time, and they have to go back to the Philippines or India, we'll have to bring some more in because we still work trained on young people. So we absolutely have to get apprenticeship going. My daughter, who's ex-Navy, wants to join Devon and Cornwall Police, They have supposedly have signed the covenant to accept military people in, but they want police officers to have a degree.
Yeah.
She was down at Armed Forces Day. Thames Valley will hire her tomorrow. Thames Valley police are trying to steal our young people to go and work for police over there because our Devon and Cornwall aren't sorting out. You've got to have a degree to be a police officer. You imagine going down to the streets at 10 o'clock at night, it's a bit of a kickoff. Stop, I'm the police, I've got a biology degree. Oh, and I've got a humanities degree.
Yeah.
Seriously, we need the people that understand what's going on. So then this has a knock-on effect, Darren. You know, if we're a free port at the moment, that will create thousands of jobs. But if Labour get in, that potentially goes out the window. So for me, we need to get our young people proper jobs, long-term careers, so that they know they've got a future. I did an apprenticeship. I'm a mechanic by trade. That's what I am. That's what I did. And it was the best thing I ever did, having a trade behind me. So that, to me, Plymouth has got to get this sorted out, right? We've got the opportunity to have proper apprenticeships. We've got to stop bringing in skills from overseas. We cannot outsource our skills creation. We've outsourced our manufacturing. By bringing in skills overseas, we are outsourcing the skills creation, and we are damaging our young people. We are giving our young people no hope for the future. Forget about having a house. They can't even afford a decent car without a decent job. So we've got to get that. It's a massive, massive thing for me because I come from a recruitment background, and our young people are our future, Darren. We've got to get them decent careers and get them, train them to be teachers, healthcare workers, nurses. But don't expect people to go to university for 3 years, come out with a £30,000-40,000 debt, earning £25,000 to £30,000 a year. How is that setting our young people up well for the future? It's madness. So apprenticeship. We've got to get it sorted in Plymouth.
I couldn't agree more. I was a science teacher. I mean, I was only a science teacher for a few years. And I had someone with a degree in biology to try to convince me that boys are actually girls and vice versa. So my whole teaching career unraveled. I got cancelled effectively. And I would highly recommend that people didn't go to university to get a degree because of the debt that people get saddled with and the quality of the education. Plymouth, and Plymouth has gone from a naval city where the culture was very much military to a university city. Do you think during that sort of transition, which has happened over the last sort of 30 years, has had a major sort of detrimental economic impact?
Totally. I mean, the whole university experience has got worse and worse and worse, and COVID completely destroyed it. And it's carrying on. And the universities are getting away with not having students actually at university. They're taking their money. I mean, my daughter, she never met her tutor. In a whole year, she did not meet her tutor once.
That during COVID?
No.
Oh, right. That wasn't during
COVID. That was after COVID. She still didn't meet her tutor.
Oh, right. After.
She had a couple of Zoom meetings with her, and that was it. So it's gone on and on and on, and they're just the education is awful. And if you look at the cutbacks in the military, that has had an impact on the people coming down here and training and staying down here as military veterans or as military people. So Plymouth, like you say, is a military city. We should be a solid city with everything, with the money coming in and the revenue coming in because of the people living down here and all the forces people being down here. And it's just got worse and worse and worse. And yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm driving around Sutton, Devonport, doing leaflets, meeting people, talking to people, and it's like, it's just falling apart.
Yeah.
It's falling apart. And I tell you what, people are telling me they are really, really fed up with it.
Oh, I mean, I've only got to walk down Union Street to understand what's happened to my city, because anyone who knows anything about Plymouth, especially back in the 90s and the 80s, it was all down Union Street. It was pretty much the party capital of the country. It was a vibrant, lively place. You could get into trouble down there if you weren't careful, but there would be a lot of matlows. And I was always taught when I worked in the dockyard, because I spent 15 years in the dockyard working on surface ships and the submarines. And I was always told the whole of Plymouth's culture is geared around the Navy and Union Street. And this was really true. And now you walk down Union Street, and we'll come on to immigration, but it's like we've got all these bazaars and sort of corner shops and decrepit buildings falling apart. Some of these are listed buildings like the Academy. and you think, my God, what has happened to the city? And if there's no more, an example, I want to do a film of just Union Street to show how badly this city has decayed. And back then, this was one of the poorest places in the country. I suspect now Plymouth, and as we go further south into Cornwall, it is still, without doubt, the poorest part of the UK. Do you think that reform will be able to turn this around as a party?
That's a massive question, of course. And I mean, if you look at what reforms, one of the reforms focus areas is about giving young people more money in the pocket, right? They want to raise the tax threshold to £20,000. And the young people are the future of this city, Darren. If we put more money in their pockets, we give them better jobs, then that is how we start turning things around at a local level. For me, cities are the foundation of this country, okay? We start with the cities and we start local. So, and by bringing the young people on board, that's where we start. And obviously by holding the councils to account, we look at the waste. So that to me is the start of how we start to turn it around, but we have to work together locally. Reform give us that kind of tax benefit platform for young people. They're all about investing in our young people for the future, making housing more affordable, reducing the cost of everything as much as they can do, keeping energy prices down by not investing hundreds and billions of pounds in net zero stuff. So it's about building that foundation. That's how Reform aim to kind of start making it better. But then at a local level, we have to say, what do we do locally? And who's got all the money locally? It is the council. They take our council tax.
Yep.
The police take big chunks of our money. That's where a lot of the cash is going. And by making the city better, that starts bringing investment in. So that's one of the reasons why I'm pushing to get the Tamar toll-free. The government needs to take ownership of the Tamar Bridge and the Tamar crossing and say it's going to be free for everybody, right? That reduces people's time and effort getting to work or school or whatever every day. But also it means businesses will then come down and go, oh, well, I've not got to spend as a logistics business £7,000 a month on vans going back and forwards over the bridge. So they're the kind of things we have to do locally to attract businesses into the city again, to invest in the city, give people more money in their pocket, and it goes from there.
We're going to flood the city with Cornish if you get rid of the tolls, mate.
Well,
we have it there for a reason. It's like a little barrier between us and them.
I'd rather the Cornish.
Our Cornwall's my favourite place, And,
Cornwall's beautiful.
I'm gradually retreating southwards at the moment. I'm in that in process of doing that. Very finally, on young people, what's the reception on the street in your canvassing from the younger demographic in particular? Are they all voting? They're all green-haired and they're going to vote Labour and Lib Dems and the Greens, or do you think that there has been a sort of sea change and actually younger people are going to vote for Reform? And I can give real-world example. I'm staying with my my life partner, my girlfriend Lucy, who I met on my travels recently.
Oh, wow.
And her two kids were here. They're voting for the very, very first time. They are Cornish. They are hippies. I'm living with a hippie community at the moment. And guess what? All the hippies are voting for Reform, including these two young people who have just turned 18. Yep. Are you getting similar feedback on the streets of Plymouth?
Okay, two things. Young people I'm talking to, they are saying they are sick and tired of being told that their generation are woke, because they're saying they're not. Right. And they're sick and tired of it. And I've had this conversation with so many young people. Okay. So that's one thing. So we're getting that all the time. I look at my own daughters. They are in the 23, 24 years old. They are voting Reform and they're not woke at all. Like, they are really not. If anything, they're more vociferous about certain issues than I am. I'm probably more woke than they are sometimes. Yeah. But here's a real indicator for me, Kate. So we did the Plymouth City College hustings. Okay. Now, normally you would expect Labour to get about 70% of the student vote, because they literally do a vote at the end of it. Right?
And in City College, I mean, I've walked into rooms where the biology teacher was going, oh, men and girls, and make sure you vote Labour because Jeremy Corbyn's going to save the planet. That was back in 2019. Yeah. I saw that in action.
So we had the hustings, and then they do a real vote at the end of it. So like I say, you'd expect Labour to get 70% of the vote, and you'd expect Reform to get pretty much zero. The votes came in. Labour got 35% of the vote. Second place was Reform with 15% of the vote. Now, you might say, but Labour still won. But if you think about the swing, of young people, 15%. People were coming up to me afterwards and shaking my hand and talking to me as a Reform candidate saying, we are behind you. We agree with what you're saying. We are sick of all this stuff. So I'm not saying it was 100%, but again, think about the environment. 35% voted Labour. And 15% voted Reform and Green. 15% voted Green, and the rest were a bit all over the place. But so that to me is a massive, massive indicator. And like I say, you look at it two ways. You either look at it, you only got 15%, you're still going to lose, or hang on, the expectation. Even ChatGPT told me you'll be lucky to get more than 2%. That was ChatGPT's forecast when I prompted it a few times.
And ChatGPT is always wrong.
ChatGPT is scary in lots of ways. I tell you, you've got to be careful because I do wonder. Well, I come from a technology background, so ChatGPT is we've got to be really careful.
What did Google say? We'll be successful when you put a search in, there's only one answer, the right answer. It's like
their answer, the answer they want us to know. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I think it's very positive outlook with regards to young people, not only what you're standing for, but also the reception of reform. You know, that they very well may get a large young vote because they are also pissed off with the legacy parties. And I will say this, the two young hippies that are going to vote for you, they're voting on our next topic, Peter. And that is, they don't want to see what's happening to their communities happen to Plymouth with regards to immigration. Well, we're just going to stop it right there. I'm here with Peter Gold, Reform UK candidate. We've talked about issues surrounding young people. We've talked about why should people vote, etc., and why Peter is standing. This is probably the most important issue to the average member of the public that faces the UK right now, and it's a massive issue, and that is immigration, both illegal and legal immigration into the UK. We have seen in the last 12 months, or 2023, I think it was about 700,000 net increase in the UK population, which is primarily through immigration through our airports or through the boats at Dover. What's your view as an individual who lives in Plymouth, Peter, of immigration into the UK, and in particular into the city, which has seen a huge number of people since 2020?
So people are contacting me as the Reform candidate. People are talking to me on the streets as a Reform candidate and saying they're scared to walk some of the streets, walk some of the parks at night. You know, I've had women contact me and saying they've been approached by people that are clearly immigrants, not necessarily legal immigrants, and they fear for their safety. So we have to be mindful of that, and that's not a good situation, and that's not being racist. That's just being factful. That, you know, based fact on a first-hand experience, I feel unsafe in my city. So that's the first thing we've got to look at. We've got to look at smart immigration, not mass immigration. So there are times when we have to bring skills in, and that's fine. And we have Australian backpackers who can come and work over here, doing the service economy jobs, working in pubs. They don't, they're not so bad. They're also worried that it's a 0-hour contract. So there are times and places for people to come and migrate into the city to help with the economy and then move back out again, back to their own countries. But I think from an immigration point of view, we have to kind of control it. And my view is that if people come across here illegally, we have to contain them somewhere. We have to then process them, and we have to return them to either their country of residence or a safe country. Now, we've been doing this for years, Darren. This is not a new issue. It's just that the volumes have got higher. So go back to, I was talking to a border force guy the other week. It just happened to sit next to him in a bar, and we were talking. And he was saying that he was in Plymouth. He said they used to have 20 staff here, and they'd have people flying in from all over the country, all over the world. They'd, chuck their passports down the toilets or whatever. And at some point, they get processed, and then they'd be put on a plane by the UK government and flown back to their country. End of. Sorted. That was the process. So it's nothing new. It's not like we haven't done this before. And all of a sudden, everybody wants to call Reform racist because we want to stop immigration. It's not a new phenomena. It's something we've been doing for years. It's just that the volumes are massive now. So the problem we have is and homelessness is a big thing for me. We have people in Plymouth who can't get somewhere to live because Plymouth has taken on a certain amount of asylum seekers and put them into accommodation that people on the street saying, why can't I get somewhere to live when these other people can? Now, the problem is, we can't just get rid of them immediately. We have to put them somewhere. But of course, we get told it's against their human rights to contain them in, let's say, an old army barracks, an old army place. Why? They've just come across on a boat. They could have died at sea. They've got no food and water, probably.
They're supposed to have come from a war zone, haven't they?
Yeah. And we put them somewhere with a roof over their head, 3 meals a day, a little bit of cash, internet access, TV, blah, blah, blah. Why is that against their human rights? We're actually putting them in a safe environment. We're not putting them in prison. And if some people, it's prison, it's not prison. Because we've got to keep our streets safe. And therefore, in that group of people that come across without documentation or until proven to be legal or illegal, we don't know who they are. So I'm sorry, we've got to put our own city first, our own people first. We do it in a humane way. We put them in a contained environment so that people of this country know that the safety and security of everybody is important, both the people coming across on the boats and the people that live here, and then we process them. But we can't just keep bringing people over if they're not legally allowed to be here. I'd like to go and live in Australia, thank you very much. I can't, because Australia don't want me. I don't call them racist. I just don't meet their criteria for a skilled migrant worker. That's it. That's it. Nothing more than that. It's not me personally against me. I just don't meet the criteria, and we have to manage it.
And we've discussed homelessness. If I walk the streets of Plymouth, I guarantee that there's a certain type of homeless person in Plymouth, and it's reported right across the country. None of them have just arrived on a boat. I don't see those people homeless on the streets. I see people who look, sometimes they're Eastern European. There is an Eastern European contingent, but most of them appear to be indigenous Brits, or in this case, indigenous Plymouthians. And the second thing I was going to say is, why? This is the $1 million question. Why are we allowing thousands every week of people to arrive illegally after they've chucked their passport overseas and come across the channel in an inflatable dinghy into this country? Why are we allowing so many just to enter without, and they're being escorted into the country by France and escorted across finally into Dover by the UK border force, etc. Why are we doing it? Is it purely because people are too afraid of being called a racist, or is there something else going on?
Well, if you listen to one narrative, they're called cannon fodder. They're letting these people into the country in the event that we end up in World War III. Then are they cheap conscripts? That is one viewpoint.
Starship troopers. Here, we'll give you citizenship. Do 2 years in the Russian meat grinder first. Yeah, I mean, I've often considered that as one of the reasons. Yeah. Very conspiratorial of you, Peter, I must say.
Yeah, the thing is, there's so much going on that we don't know about, Darren. And this is why we've got to break the system. Because if we don't break this system, we just get taken along for a ride, taken along, as idiots, just following it along, and there's nothing we can do. And the problem is, the government want a certain amount of people to not vote. They want a certain amount of people to go off grid, because that suits their narrative. It suits their control. And so if a third of the population go, you know what, I'm not going to consent, I'm just going to step back, they're thinking, thank you very much, we'll have that.
There's no massive push. You don't see giant posters. Oh, it's election on July the 4th, American Independence Day. Funny date, but it's a Thursday. And you don't see giant posters saying, make sure you vote. You don't see some massive social media campaign coming out of the Conservative government or the establishment saying, make sure you vote. The more people vote, the better it is for democracy. It will save democracy if everybody votes. You don't see that, and you're right. Which is why I've changed my mind and said I'm going to vote for reform, vote for you, Peter, is because, one, we don't have the numbers and I do not vote, or I do not consent. And actually, the establishment don't want us to vote because if everybody voted, I suspect reform or independent candidates might actually whitewash the
Totally.
existing legacy parties, which is why I've decided to participate in this year's election. And one of the major issues for me is the devastating impact of illegal immigration in particular, but immigration in general into the UK, and how it's impacted my city. Do you think finally that there might be an attempt to really disrupt the cohesion of the United Kingdom, the cohesion of our society and our culture, so that it's irreparable?
It's already happening, Darren. It's already happening. And this is why, again, we form our standing up and saying we have to control immigration. Because if we don't, we just change the culture, we change the country in its entirety. And again, it's nothing against having skilled workers from different countries coming over here.
Mm.
But again, at the end of the day, this is our country. People voted for Brexit. They had a referendum and the majority voted for it. Whether you voted for or against, doesn't matter. We are where we are, and we have to follow that through now. And that is why Reform are saying we have to sort immigration out, because if we don't, what are we as a country? If you look at what Labour will do, you look at what Labour are saying. Labour is like, you just can't say what you want to say. You have to follow the party line. They are so woke, it's unbelievable. Keir Starmer doesn't quite know what. You need to go back to biology lessons and understand the difference between a man and a woman.
And Lammy.
Yeah, and Lammy. Yeah, it's just. I mean, what is happening, Dan? What is happening to our country? What's happening to our young people? This is what this thing is. You're not as old as me, but I'm at the back end of my life. I'm kind of supposed to be semi-retired. I wasn't supposed to be doing all this stuff. But I look at my kids and I think about hopefully my grandkids. What are we bringing them into? And I even say to my kids, I don't know if I would want to have kids if I was their age. And that we shouldn't be saying that. We should not be thinking like that. And that's where it's got to, Darren. And if we don't get this right for our own kids, what chance have our grandkids got, mate?
Yeah, I actually think there's an obvious intention for people to. They want people to decide not to have children. I think that's one of the desired outcomes of all the agendas, is that particularly the indigenous people of the UK to go, do you know what, I don't want to bring children into this world because of immigration, because of woke ideology, because of the economic situation, because of war, which we'll come on to, etc. I think that's a desired outcome, and as you've just said, it is an outcome that's materializing because of these narratives. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm here with Peter Gold from Reform UK. Two other local issues that affect Plymouth that are actually of quite serious concern. First of all, Tinside Pool, which is Plymouth's Lido. It's out on the seafront on the Hoe. It's in serious disrepair. Apparently, and you can confirm or not confirm this, the Labour government, the local Labour authority, know how badly and how decrepit this pool is. In fact, it's a danger to the swimmers, and yet we've got a load of people in there probably right now having a morning swim. How serious is the issues with Tinside that you've uncovered?
Well, from what I've seen and what I've read, there's been a big structural survey, and I wouldn't say they've condemned it, but not far off. There's cracks in the infrastructure, there's seawater getting in, there's pumps having to run to actually pump the foul water back into sea. So there's sewage leakage effectively. I mean, and it's an amazing build or architecture for the city, and it should be made to look absolutely fantastic. But structurally, it would appear that it's unsafe. Yet the council have gone ahead with building new cafes and youth centres on the top of it. So they're building on shaky foundations, and that worries. I mean, look at the cracks on this picture. You can probably see now, and this is really scary.
This one
that
goes
they're doing all this extra
all the
work.
way. This one goes all the way down, and apparently there's a whole cave system under here.
Yeah,
that's caused by erosion and stuff, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The Labour, the local council know about it, and they want to keep it hush until after the election. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yeah, I mean, if you look around the front, the whole front of the pool, that's a tunnel area around the front where all the maintenance pipes go, and that's all leaking in there. I've seen some videos where it's all leaking underground and the rubble's falling down. So again, what I've read online on Plymouth Eye is that it has been well, basically Labour Council have said no, wait till after the local election before we do anything with it. And this goes back to 2022. It was discussed in October 2023 to leave it until after the local elections in May 2024. That's and I think if you remember rightly, we had a little bit of rain this winter, didn't we?
Yep.
We had a few storms.
It hasn't stopped for 18 months.
In fact, I was on the Hoe in a named storm delivering food to the homeless people because we go 365 days a year. So we've had some serious weather come in and hit the Lido. What extra damage has been done since then? And I was there last week, and people are still swimming in there.
Yeah. As far as I know, people are still swimming in there. And if you're listening to this right now, you might want to contact your local councillor and ask what is going on with the Lido, what is the damage there, and how dangerous is it, and reconsider going swimming in there, because from what I understand, it is a disaster waiting to happen, Peter.
Yeah.
And my other one, this is something that's far closer to my home, and it touches on the woke stuff that we've adhered to or implied. I'll cut all that out. Implied in some of our other conversation, and that is the intention to erase not just local culture and history, but national heroes from the history book. This sign used to belong to a guy called Sir John Hawkins Square. He built Plymouth. He was related to the picture of the guy in the statue, which is Sir Francis Drake. I understand a Labour government and future Labour councils have their eye on this statue and the previous residents of yourselves, the statue in Tavistock. What do you think about the attack on our cultural heroes and the erasure of our history?
Yeah, totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. I mean, how far back do we go? Should we get rid of the Romans as well? Pretend they didn't exist? The thing is, we have to know we can't change history, and we should teach our children the history, give them the information, and let them make their minds up. We shouldn't be spoon feeding them what we now believe is the right information. What Labour or somebody else says, oh, we need to erase that bit of our history. Of course, slave trade was awful. It was abominable. Nobody within the right mind would say, oh, yeah, that was okay. That's part of our history. Let's be proud of slave trade. We're not saying that.
No.
Our children have to understand what happened so that they don't make the same decisions in the future. So for me, erasing our history of our country is totally unacceptable. And that street sign, we will get that back.
Yeah.
We will fight them and get that back, because that is totally unacceptable.
I mean, that statement alone, Peter, will ring very, very well with a whole load of constituents. There have been petitions. The local newspaper have run petitions for name changes and stuff. They've lost everything. The local public are saying, put that street sign back. This is a national hero.
Yep.
Sir Francis Drake and this guy, Sir John Hawkins, they fought off multiple invasions, not just the one that you've heard of the Spanish combined fleets of the Spanish and French Armada in the late 1500s, but multiple invasions have been defended by this city, home of the British Navy, and yet some woke cafe around the corner from this street sign got 20,000 signatures from outside of the city and had it removed. And my friend Danny Bampin, who'll be very pleased to hear what you're saying, he's actually been fighting for the last 3 years, since the riots of 2020 by BLM, to get that street sign back. And that's an absolute vote winner as far as I'm concerned. Any other comment on the destruction of our culture and history, and or the Tinside Pool, or any other issue that's local?
Yeah, just on that point, just quickly, Darren, and this is why I need to get elected, because if I'm not elected, look at the hassle that Danny gets. It's a long battle for him. They don't consider him important. As an MP, working on behalf of your constituents, you have influence, you have power. They have to take you seriously. And that's why it's so important we get this sorted out. Take Armada away, right? Armada away. The trees were chopped down by the Conservatives. And of course, Labour went, oh, great, yeah, they're the bad guys. Let's kick them out. But now they're going to do the same. It's gone from 12 million to 37 million to 54 million. These are the kind of things we've got to stop. Heritage buildings. I'm being told some of the heritage buildings are being knocked down in the dockyard to be made way for modern sheds for more logistics. We've had green areas of the city being replaced by solar panels. Seriously, what's that all about? If we want to put solar panels up to reduce energy because they work, fine. Put them on buildings, put them on empty roof spaces. Start making Sherford Estate have them, but don't take away green centres that have got wildlife and where people enjoy themselves and go for a quiet walk their dogs. So there's so many local things down here. And Darren, and this is the thing. Without a platform, without a position, they will just ignore us. And if we get another Labour MP, or if we get Labour back in, we have 2 Labour MPs in the city, we have zero chance, mate. Absolutely no chance whatsoever of stopping the council doing what they want and ignoring what the people want.
I mean, what I'm hearing from some of my local groups on Twitter and from people that I speak to, they are terrified of what's going to happen to what's left of Plymouth over the next 4 or 5 years if a Labour government gets in, that more Labour MPs represent the city, and we have a continuation of this Tudor Evans-led Labour council in Plymouth. And I've got to get his name in because he's been here forever and he's done no good for the city apart from milk our taxpayers' money. So, I mean, all those things that you just said, for me personally, are music to my ears. And, let's hope you're successful and we can protect what is like historically ours, in Plymouth. Okay, Peter of Reform UK. These are some of the topics that are really, really important to voters, and in particular, my Twitter audience, who are most likely going to listen to our conversation. And the first one is COVID. We've seen the campaigns from the political parties, including Reform, and none of them have really given any focus to lockdowns, the need for lockdowns from COVID, the mask mandates, the punishment our children received in schools, and of course, an issue which I've spent the last, God knows how long, the last few years campaigning against, including walking across the south of the UK, is vaccines, vaccine injuries and excess deaths. Now, I don't want to feed you lines. I'm just going to ask you what your opinion was of the whole COVID saga from 2020. What you might do, depending on what constituents contact you about, in taking forward things like, can we investigate the excess deaths that we're experiencing now? Can we investigate vaccine injuries? Were lockdowns ever necessary? Obviously don't think any of it was necessary. What's your opinion, Peter?
Okay. I think the first thing we've got to do is we have to recognize what happened, and we have to investigate it going forward and say, right, what happened? What really happened? And what do we do going forward? So take the flu jab, okay? Being over 55, I get every winter, I get my text message from the GP, we recommend you take a flu jab. I don't. It's my choice. Yep. Okay, I have a choice not to take the flu jab. Same with people that come down to the Plymouth Sutton. They are given the option of a flu jab and COVID jab. Now, we should be given choice. Lockdown it felt okay, the first one, because it was a little bit kind of different and what's happening. But then as they went on, it was just doing so much damage to people. And the thing is, there's evidence that the amount of the people in difficult, abusive household situations, in the abuse against women and girls, increased massively during COVID. We've seen children die because of being stuck in difficult situations and nobody was aware of what's going on. We've seen what's happened to our children, we've got kids kind of growing up, coming in out of teenage years, who had 2 or 3 years kind of locked down, and we've seen the damage to them. We've got to recognize what's happened here and say never again. It can't happen again. The fact that vaccines take years and years and billions of pounds to be approved, then all of a sudden we can do it in 6 months. What's going on there? You know, are we being ripped off by the pharmaceutical companies pre-COVID, and they don't really take that long to be approved, or have we just all been given a vaccine that wasn't approved? And again, if you look at the numbers, according to the numbers, deaths are still going up. Right? They went up. I think we're about just under 600,000 pre-COVID. They went up to about 15% increase in deaths in the first COVID year. Then they dipped down again, but they've not gone down back to where they were. And now, as you can see from the slide, they're starting to go back up again. Now,
that was
what is that?
is
And the thing is, Darren, the thing is, right, we have a problem with social care. We have an NHS that can't cope. We have an NHS England project called Living with Frailty. It's all about prevention, trying to prevent people going into hospital, because we know when people go into hospital, older people over 75 who are typically living with frailty, they go into hospital, they get worse, not better. So is the answer to having not enough social care to put them in hospital so they don't come back out the other end? That sounds awful to say, but if people are dying, it's kind of solved some of the social care issue. So
I
need to look into
I can see what you're implying there, and I think that's what happened. I think there are some aspects of whatever we experienced in COVID, and my opinions are well known. You know, I think it was a deliberate act of harm carried out on the public by the government. That's a very polite way of explaining what happened. And yeah, an answer to the pension crisis we might be facing will be to eliminate some of the people that might pull on those pensions. And I think that's maybe what you're implying. If I contact you, you're successful, and I've tried this multiple times with Luke Pollard, who has just sent me a standard response, safe and effective, and say, hey, excess deaths, according to this graph, which is based on ONS data, will you investigate? And will you join calls for an investigation if I ask you to, and other people ask you to, and those link between excess deaths now and the COVID jabs?
Absolutely. Look, I'm a numbers guy, okay? The numbers are what the numbers are. And these are not your numbers, these are ONS numbers, okay? So if the numbers were back down at normal death rates, then I'd have to say, Darren, where's the problem? Where's the issue on that particular statistic? But the numbers are in front of us. So absolutely, we have to investigate it, because again, and I know I keep going on about this, we've got to think about the country and the world we leave our young people. You know, they are going to inherit the things we do today. They will inherit those things tomorrow. So absolutely, these investigations have to happen, because they don't want us. The system does not want us to ask these questions, Darren. You know they don't want us to ask these questions. There's big money riding on all of these things, not our money, other big money. And we've got to have the question, we've got to have the investigations. Look at the post office scandal, right? Look how long that's taken. I mean, that is just beyond words. And these are the things we have to kind of get out to the open. And the whole deaths, COVID, lockdowns, the damage we've done to our children, we have done damage to our children. It has had an impact. And, 1 minute there were people living on the streets, all of a sudden they found somewhere for them to live during COVID. Funny that. And now they can't. Now they're back on the streets again, because apparently now they can't find anywhere to live. So it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, and we've got to call it out, and we have to be prepared, put our heads on the block and say, we want answers, and we're going to do this, and we're going to go for it. And people will no doubt there'll be pushback, and I'll probably be public enemy number one in Plymouth. I'll have a target on my back. But listen, I'm not doing this to make friends. I'm doing this because I don't like an unjust society, and it's the weaker people in society that get trodden on. And I start from the bottom, the people on the street, and we work our way up. And we say, enough's enough, mate. Enough's enough.
And if a medical emergency, an international medical emergency occurs again. I don't know. The WHO goes, right, bird flu time. Everyone locked down. Do you think reform are going to, if they were in if they're in power, their government, or just you locally as the local MP, are you going to support calls for things like lockdowns and masks and mandates and everything that we experienced during COVID, or are you going to say no, we're not doing that again?
I think it's about education. It's about saying, people, you have a choice. This is what we're being told. Okay. This is what we're being told. For example, let's say bird flu, right? There's an outbreak of bird flu, or we think there's another SARS pandemic.
Or we're being told there
epidemic.
is, yeah, because
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. But we have to be able to make our own choices. And that can be divisive. But I think the way reform approach things, which is common sense, right? Reform, I would expect, would go, right, let's look at what happened last time. Look at Sweden, right? Sweden's deaths didn't change that much, and they didn't lock down. I remember having calls with people in Sweden, and we were all locked down, and they were sat in a cafe having a coffee. We were like, so no, I would not support immediate lockdowns. Again, I would be saying we have to say to people, if a decision is we're going to give free masks, you can have a mask if you want one. It's your choice. There's none of this. You can't go into Tesco and do your shopping unless you wear a mask.
Yeah.
So we have to make our own decisions.
We have to see what happens in the future. The rumours are, they're permanently swirling on social media, is that there may well be an attempt to lock us down and mask us up and jab us again. So we'll see what happens. But I think, touch words, public pushback and the sort of general consensus now of what happened in the past with COVID means that it's going to be very difficult for them to do it again. And it might be just more of a social media narrative than something that will materialize in reality. And another major issue, and we've discussed this already, and it's a red line for me, are some of the wars that the UK, I want to say, are involved in, but they're not. They are supplying the weapons and pushing the narrative. So without putting words in your mouth, Peter, what is your opinion on what's going on in Eastern Europe and Ukraine with NATO and Russia? And the same question, but applied to the Middle East with Gaza, Israel, and Iran.
Yeah, I mean, let's just start with Gaza. As far as I'm concerned, there should have been an immediate ceasefire months ago. Okay, look, nobody's going to say what Hamas did was anything other than abhorrent. Okay, it was totally wrong. Okay, Israel retaliated. They have a right to retaliate, but then it should have been stopped. There are thousands and thousands of young children, women, and men being slaughtered by this incessant bombing. As far as I'm concerned, it should be a ceasefire, full ceasefire. As the West, we should facilitate negotiations in the Middle East, but we should not be taking control of those. I've got friends who are Israelis, and they have very, very, very strong views on what should be happening. I can't understand their thought process because I've never lived in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I am of Jewish heritage, but that's neither here nor there, really. So I get away with having the conversation, is why I make that point. So I can have this conversation with them and be quite harsh with them. But we can't understand their viewpoint. So let's just call a ceasefire, stop the deaths, and the West hold them to account to have no more war, and stop giving them arms. We should stop giving the arms over there because we need to do a humanitarian thing and stop the crisis. As simple as that. And that is not anti-Semitic. That is simply this. We need to stop killing innocent people. It's as simple as that, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, call it. Stop genociding tens of thousands of people and literally carpet bomb. They're not carpet bombing. Go and have a look at pictures of Gaza, and you will see from north to south it's slowly being turned into dust. To say that and for it to be considered anti-Semitic makes my stomach boil. And obviously this is a major sort of issue for reform because there are concerns that there's a lot of Israeli money or Zionist money or Jewish money. It depends on how you view things coming into not the political system in the UK. And there are many who feel that reform are just one of those recipients, and that they're all part of the same political establishment. How do you feel about that comment about the money coming into reform coming from the same people who are bombing Gazans?
I wouldn't be comfortable with that, to be honest. And the problem is, you never quite know the truth, and it's whether we get accused of having Russian money, Israeli money, but I'm not comfortable with it at all, because I don't think it's the right thing to be doing. It should not be happening. But again, it comes down. This is why the independents don't have a place, because we're not linked to any of those things. We can say what we want. Yeah. And maybe after this podcast, I will get sacked for saying the wrong things. Who knows?
Oh,
but if
I hope not.
Look, listen.
These are mindful topics.
It's my opinion. It's my view, and I'm going to be honest. And listen, mate. The worst thing they can do is sack me. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I'll cut some of those bits out.
Hopefully they won't.
We shall see. Okay, and Russia, Ukraine. Again, it's another hot topic. My opinion is, and you already know what my opinion is. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What's your opinion of that? What seems to be an intensifying and quite concerning conflict?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to find a way for peace. Okay. And it's interesting. I was talking to a young guy this week, and he's 23, 24. And his view was, we can't give Putin what he wants. We have to fight him. I went, okay, fair enough. I said, so Ukraine are running out of young people. So as the UK is supporting the Ukrainian government in this war against Putin, you will be conscripted next. How do you feel about that? Oh, I don't want to go. It's not my country. I said, well, hang on. You can't say keep on fighting fire with fire, but then not be prepared to go to war. So it's quite disingenuous for people to think like that. So as far as I'm concerned, we have to accept that too many people are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying, both on the Russian side and on the Ukrainian side. Putin doesn't care. He doesn't care how many people die to get what he wants. And we need to stop the war and say, it's easy for us to say, let him keep Crimea. If that's what he wants, give him Crimea. But we can't have people keep on dying. And if we keep fighting fire with fire, we'll just get bigger explosions. And we will eventually, the next level will be there are no Ukrainians left to fight. NATO forces will go in. And where does that take us? Some people reckon we're only 6 months away from World War III.
We will be with a Labour government. If Starmer gets into power probably before the end of the year, we might be in a far more serious.
Exactly. And we've got, and if people, and we have to accept, even if you don't agree that is the outcome, you have to be able to recognize that's a possibility. Common sense would say that is a possibility. They play war games. They can map out different forecasts. So on the basis that is a possibility, surely we need to step back and say, let's stop now before it gets too far.
Do you think there's a determination by the West, by NATO, by the USA, forget about the Middle East, the USA and NATO, do you think that there's a determination and very much a direction to war? And I say this because someone blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Whoever did that, USA, whoever did that wants a war with Russia. That potentially could have resulted in Washington DC going up in a mushroom cloud. Just that one attack. It was such a critical and expensive piece of infrastructure. There's and the environmental damage as well. Do you think NATO are deliberately provoking Russia into a direct conflict?
Yeah, I don't know, but it looks that way. And if you look at what Nigel Farage said 10 years ago, he said, if you keep on poking the Russian bear, this is what's going to happen. That's not saying what Putin's done was right, but that is what's happened. And again, I would say the prediction is if we keep on pushing and Ukraine run out of people, which they will do, then we then put troops in there.
Of a Ukrainian soldier. There are reports of Russian soldiers picking up 3-month-old pregnant women from the front line, from trenches.
Right.
I mean, that's the situation on the ground. That's why you see these videos of the snatch squads. And if you listen to Colonel Douglas McGregor, where they're losing 2,000 men a day in Ukraine, 2,000 a day now, and that's double what they were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so the days are coming to an end for Ukraine to mount any sort of defense of their own country, whether they're right or not to do so.
Yeah.
And so it's only a matter of time before actual NATO soldiers are officially, because they're already there, officially on the ground facing Russian soldiers.
Yeah. It's a scary future, and I would like to think that our leaders of the world would actually, well, they do know this. Let's be honest. They do know what's going to happen. They have these forecasts. They know what they're doing. And I just hope that something will happen where we just stop this carnage of people. Because again, it's the young people that are going to war. You know, it's the young people that are the future of this planet. And if we destroy so many of them in these wars, then, you know, it's game over. It gets to the point of being game over.
And finally, we'll leave war. There is one other issue, and that's net zero, climate change, some of the CBDCs and digital ID. How do you feel about these initiatives? And is Nigel Farage's stance where he has said, we're going to end ULEZ, we're going to end low traffic neighborhoods and some of these other environmental emission type initiatives. Does he mean that? Is he able to do that? Are you a supporter of using cash?
Yeah, I think he would be able to do that. I think take ULEZ as an example. That's a cash generator. That's attacking the people that can't afford to be attacked. Because most car, I mean, even my wife's 10-year-old car is ULEZ compliant. So the people who've got cars that are probably worth 2 or 3 grand can't afford to buy a newer car. They're having to pay a tax for having an old car. And the people that can afford a newer car are not paying a tax who could afford to pay it. So how is that helping? What is it achieving if the people that are supposedly polluting the environment can't afford to get rid of the car that's polluting the environment and instead just have to pay a penalty for polluting the environment? It's just a cash generator. So I think absolutely Farage will be able to get rid of that, and people will push back, and it will not happen. Same with low traffic neighborhoods, LTNs. You know, again, it's a war against the motorists. People like their cars. People have got their cars. Public transport is useless in this country. So if everybody got rid of their car and relied on public transport, we'd never get anywhere. It would destroy the economy overnight. So that kind of nonsense will absolutely, Farage is not in favour of that. And the more we digitise this world, the more control the government has over us. And if you take, for example, people trying to make a few quid by renting their room out on Airbnb or Booking.com, right? The government are now enforcing all of those companies like Booking.com and Airbnb to submit all of the transactions to the government, HMRC, so they can track who's doing what where. Now, you know, to me, if you can make a few extra quid by letting your room out, and you are allowed to earn 7,500 tax-free anyway, but it's just getting ridiculous. HMRC are using AI to monitor people's social media feeds. So if you're going on holiday, you're going on 2 holidays or 3 holidays, don't stick too much on social media, because HMRC, it will flag, oh, Darren's been away on 4 holidays this year.
Oh,
He only earned 10 grand a year. How does he pay for that? How does he pay for all these holidays? And it flags investigation. And AI is getting smarter and smarter. So the more we do digitally, the easier it is to track us. And it's all about making sure we pay as much into the system as possible, and we're controlled, and they know where we're going and what we're doing, because if you can control it, you can manage it. And if you can manage it, you can tell it what to do.
Yeah. And we'll finish there with one of my favourite catchphrases, which is a cashless society is a surveillance society. And I think, just, you know, going on what you were just saying, That's the intention, is it? It's a sort of restriction of rights, mopping up maximum amount of taxes, whilst watching every single thing that we do in terms of our travel and our transactions. So, okay, Peter, thanks ever so much for coming on to talk to me. If you've got any final comments before I hit the stop button, because Lucy's back and I've got a plumber upstairs and they're making a lot of noise.
All I'd say is if I do get sacked, please vote for me in local elections.
Yeah, well, you've got my vote, Peter, and I'm sure.
But joking apart, I mean, this is now, please, all I'd say is lend me your vote. Trust me once, okay? You'll never trust me a second time if I let you down. Trust me with your vote. This is a massive, monumental time. We have a chance to really fight back and show the country we're being serious. So please, lend me a vote just this time. Judge me on what I do. Okay, judge me in 5 years' time on what I've achieved for this city. And if I let you down, I will not stand again. But if I'm successful, then you can buy me a beer, but not too many beers, because only so many beers I can handle.
Yeah.
But yeah, seriously, lend me a vote. Let's do this.
Yeah, and not voting, much to my disappointment, isn't going to achieve a single thing apart from keep Tudor Evans in at Plymouth and to keep or Luke Pollard and to put a Starmer government in place where all the worst aspects of some of the topics that we've discussed could very, very well materialise.
There are 30,000 non-voters in Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport. I am about 15,000 votes behind Luke Pollard, according to the polls.
Right.
So there are enough people that don't vote, that Labour don't even try to get to vote because they've got enough without those. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to vote because there's too many of you. And if we can get the non-voters to say, this time I'm doing it, we can get Labour out. It's as simple as that. The numbers are there. The mathematics stack up. We can do this. But I need your help. I need the non-voters to say, I'm not going to necessarily consent, but I am going to consent to getting Labour out.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, my pleasure, mate. Thanks for your time.